Hello everyone, and welcome once again to Caleb Likes Books. Today I have a top 10 video for you, and that is going to be my top 10 favorite Star Wars authors. Some time ago, I think a couple years ago or so, or maybe a year and a half ago, I can't remember, but a while ago anyway, I did a ranking of my top 5 authors in general, but now I'm going to be focusing specifically on Star Wars authors. So before I get into the list, I do have a top 10. I also have 5 honorable mentions, which I'll just name off real quick before I get into the list. But this is including both canon and Legends or Expanded Universe authors, authors who contributed to only one or the other, authors that contributed to both. In fact, I think on my actual list, there's only one author that contributed solely to canon. There's a handful that contributed to both, but a lot of them are primarily Expanded Universe authors. However, I wasn't, restricting it to only one or the other. It was all, both timelines are allowed. Also, I am not taking into account anything else that these authors may have written outside of Star Wars. I don't think, at this moment at least, there's anything outside of Star Wars I've read by any of these authors, although several of them I am interested in reading their other work. I'm exclusively looking at their books that they have written for Star Wars. And also keep in mind, I have not read every single Star Wars book out there, and this list is obviously only based on the books by each of these authors I have read. It is very possible that there will be, books by some of these authors that say, there's a low-ranked author that has several books I haven't read. If I read more of those books and love them, they may rise up the list, or an author who is not even on the list, if I haven't read any of their books before, or maybe I've only read 1 or 2 and didn't think they warranted them being on the list, it's fully possible that this list will change in the future as I read more Star Wars books and more Star Wars authors. So as I go through these, I will point out some of the books that they wrote that contributed to my decision. So without any further ado, let's first discuss my 5 honorable mentions. I'm just going to name them off and a couple books that they've written. I'm not really going to talk about them much in depth. So first honorable mention is George Mann. Of his stuff, I have read Star Wars: The High Republic, The Eye of Darkness, as well as Myths and Fables, as well as Dark Legends, all of which I enjoyed. Also, Michael Stackpole, who wrote Rogue Squadron. That's the only X-Wing book that I've read so far, but he wrote Rogue Squadron as well as a handful of New Jedi Order books, and I, Jedi as well. So I like his stuff generally. As well, Cavan Scott, who wrote 2 High Republic books that I've read, Rising Storm, which is one of my absolute favorite Star Wars books, as well as Path of Vengeance, which is not so much a favorite for me. If I had liked Path of Vengeance more, he may have appeared in my top 10, but just me loving Rising Storm so much doesn't quite warrant it. Sean Williams, who wrote the 2 Force Unleashed novelizations, which hold a very special place in my heart. He also wrote the New Jedi Order Force Heretic trilogy with Shane Dix, as well as some of the Old Republic books. And the final honorable mention that I have is Karen Traviss, and of her books, I have only so far read her Republic Commando books, which I really like, but again, just didn't quite land her a spot on this list. So at number 10, we have Kevin J. Anderson. Now I am including him because of the Jedi Academy trilogy as well as Darksaber. Now, Kevin J. Anderson, his books, this one to me is much more of like a kind of biased, very subjective placement. I would not say he has written the absolute best stuff that I have read. I really enjoyed Darksaber. I really enjoyed the Jedi Academy trilogy, but I don't think either of them are like absolute top tier Star Wars books, although I do think Jedi Search, the first Jedi Academy book, is very, very good. I really love that one. But he's just an author that holds a special place in my heart because the Jedi Academy trilogy was the first EU thing that I read in Star Wars that was not a novelization. And so the Jedi Academy trilogy just holds a really special place in my heart. Kevin J. Anderson in general, even though I don't love every single book of his that I have read, I generally do enjoy his writing, and I'm very interested in reading more of it, especially some of his non-Star Wars stuff, because I don't think he wrote a whole lot of other Star Wars books in terms of the regular adult novels. I know he wrote a lot of like middle grade stuff and things like that, but I have not read that yet. So he is going to be my number 10 spot. Number 9 is an author that I ordinarily would not have thought to include, but as I looked through all of the authors of Star Wars that I have read, he's one that jumped out at me, which is Paul S. Kemp. And I'm including him for Lords of the Sith, as well as The Old Republic Deceived, both of which are books I really enjoyed. Deceived is not one of my absolute favorites, but it's a book I really enjoy every time I read it. I've read it several times now, and I always have really liked it. It's a really enjoyable book, and he also wrote Lords of the Sith, which I would consider to be one of my absolute top-tier Star Wars books, both in terms of the canon books and in general. I have really enjoyed both of these books he has written. I think he's got a few more that I have not yet read. I believe he wrote Crosscurrent and Riptide, if my memory is correct, which I haven't read yet. I'm holding off on those until after I read Legacy of the Force, because those take place after that series. And even though I know a couple spoilers for Legacy of the Force, I don't want to encounter any spoilers that I don't know yet, just in case they appear in those books. So I'm holding off on those, but I'm very excited to read them because they seem really interesting. And as is evidenced by his placement here, I really enjoyed the books of his that I have read so far. So he comes in at number 9. Number 8 is an author that is appearing exclusively because of one trilogy, and that is A.C. Crispin. A.C. Crispin wrote the Han Solo trilogy, made up of The Paradise Snare, The Hutt Gambit, and Rebel Dawn, I believe is the name of the last one, all of which I loved. I love that trilogy. It is, I don't know if it is my favorite Star Wars book trilogy, but it is certainly high up there, like top 3 at least, possibly my favorite book trilogy in all of Star Wars. It's a fantastic trilogy, and I really enjoy A.C. Crispin's writing in general in that trilogy. And just generally, that's kind of the reason why A.C. Crispin makes it on this list, is because I really like that trilogy a whole lot. Wish she got to write some more for Star Wars, but unfortunately I think this is the only thing she ever wrote. Yeah. So that is my number 8 spot. We're getting into some of the real big heavy hitters now with these next handful of placements. At number 7, I have James Luceno, who has written several Star Wars books that I have read, including Darth Plagueis, which I think is amazing. He wrote some New Jedi Order books, which I enjoyed generally. Not some of my favorites in the series. His duology that he did, I thought was, decent, good, not amazing, but he also wrote the last book in the series, The Unifying Force, which was amazing. Great ending to that series. He also wrote Dark Lord, The Rise of Darth Vader, which I really like, and Tarkin, which is, in my opinion, one of the more kind of mediocre Star Wars books that I've read, although I do really like the character work in that book, but it's not one of my favorites. But he has written enough that I really like that lands him at a decent spot in this list, and a lot of that is due to The Unifying Force and Darth Plagueis, and to a lesser degree, Dark Lord, The Rise of Darth Vader. I really enjoy his writing. Every time I go to read one of his books, I get excited for it because I really enjoy his stuff. Just a really fun author to read. I really enjoy the way he sprinkles in references to other books into his work and things like that. And just generally an author that I always look forward to reading whenever I have a new book of his to check out. Number 6 is an author that honestly I wish I could place higher, but that's just how the list went, which is going to be Drew Karpyshyn. Now, Drew Karpyshyn wrote the Darth Bane trilogy, which I love, especially the first 2 books I think are incredible. He also wrote 2 other Old Republic books, which are Annihilation, which to my memory I enjoyed, but it has been 10 or 11 years since I've read it, and so I don't remember it all that well, but to my memory I enjoyed it. He also wrote Revan, which I am very split on. I love the first half of that book, don't much care for the second half, but I think that the first half of Revan, as well as the Darth Bane trilogy, justifies his placement on this list. Really great author in general. Even the stuff of his that I didn't love as much, like the third Darth Bane book, which is still good, just not quite amazing to me, as well as, the remainder of Revan, and even what I remember of Annihilation. I still generally enjoy it. I like his writing style. I really like the stuff he tends to cover in his books. He tends to cover, like with the Darth Bane trilogy, a lot of like Sith stuff, which I really enjoy. And I think that he writes kind of Force user-y type stuff really well. And I enjoy that kind of thing. quite a bit. So that is why he appears on this list. Now, you guys are going to have to try not to get too mad at me for placing this author so low, but at number 5, I have Timothy Zahn. Kind of the one who really started it all with Star Wars books. He was not the one that wrote the first Star Wars books, but he is the one that wrote the original Thrawn trilogy, which is basically the reason why we have Star Wars publishing as it exists today. So I've read that trilogy. I've read his first canon Thrawn trilogy. I have not yet read the Ascendancy trilogy, but I really want to. And I've also read a handful of other books that he wrote, such as Outbound Flight, Choices of One. There may be 1 or 2 other ones in there that I'm forgetting as well. And I also own a few more of his books that I need to read, like The Hand of Thrawn duology, Survivor's Quest, things like that. But Timothy Zahn tends, for the most part, to not write my absolute favorite books in Star Wars, but he always delivers ones that I really enjoy. He is probably one of the most consistent Star Wars authors out there for me. He always writes an entertaining, enjoyable book that, even if it doesn't quite crack like my favorite Star Wars books of all time, always writes ones that I enjoy and that I have a good time reading. And every time I go to read one of his Star Wars books, I fully expect to have a good time with it. And so that is why he just barely makes it into my top 5 at number 5. Number 4, coming in with only 2 books of his that I've read, but 2 books that I really enjoyed, is going to be Matthew Stover. Now, Matthew Stover is one that for most people is a favorite because of his Revenge of the Sith novelization. I have not read that yet. The 2 books of his that I have read were Shatterpoint, which I really enjoyed. It's kind of fallen off a little bit for me as time has gone on. I don't find it as memorable as I would like, but I did really enjoy reading it when I first read it. And Traitor from the New Jedi Order, which is arguably my favorite Legends book and also arguably my favorite Star Wars book in general. I love that book. Matthew Stover, like, not only are his books really enjoyable to read to me, and I really like the stories that he tells and how he develops his characters and all this stuff, which are things that are both done very well in both of the books that I've read of him, but also in terms of his prose, he is probably my favorite prose in terms of that when it comes to Star Wars authors. Probably has my favorite prose. I really like his writing style a lot. And so that makes me just more excited to read things like the Revenge of the Sith novelization, which Revenge of the Sith already has arguably my favorite storyline in any of the Star Wars movies. And on top of the little excerpts and quotes of it that I have read online and the fact that he is writing it, I'm very excited to read that eventually. So Matthew Stover also makes it into the top 5 at number 4. Number 3 is an author that I never see get to, actually number 3 and number 2 are both authors that I see not getting talked about as much as I think they deserve. Number 3 is going to be Greg Keyes. Now, to my knowledge, he only ever wrote 3 Star Wars books, all of which are in the New Jedi Order, which include the Edge of Victory duology, which is a fantastic duology. The first book, Conquest, is probably in my top 3 or top 5 New Jedi Order books. I love that book. And the second book, Rebirth, is not quite as good in my opinion, but still excellent. And he also wrote The Final Prophecy, the penultimate book in the series, and also top 3 or top 5 favorite books in the series for me. Super underrated book in New Jedi Order. Everyone talks about Traitor, everyone talks about Star by Star, everyone talks about Unifying Force. More people should talk about Final Prophecy, in my opinion. I think that's a fantastic book. And Greg Keyes, I loved all 3 of the books in New Jedi Order that I read. I love his work with the characters. I really enjoy the stories he tells. I really like kind of the unique approaches to the stories that he had in some ways. Like the approach to the story in The Final Prophecy was super unique for the series. And generally, he's one of the authors that, like, I wish he got to write more Star Wars books, because I adored all 3 of these. And I just wish he got to write more Star Wars, because I bet I would have loved it. Unfortunately, so far that is not the case. Maybe they'll bring him back for something in the canon potentially someday. I mean, they've been bringing back, like, you know, John Jackson Miller, Timothy Zahn, Stephen Barnes, some of those authors. So maybe he'll get brought back someday, potentially. We'll see. But he is going to be my number 3 spot. Then at number 2, I was surprised how highly I put this author, but as I was looking through the list of authors, I felt like he had to be ranked very highly because I have adored all 3 books of his that I have read, much like Greg Keyes, and the thing that pushed him over the edge is that I would say that I like all 3 of these books a little bit better than the 3 Greg Keyes books, and that is going to be Joe Schreiber. Joe Schreiber has written 3 Star Wars books in the expanded universe, those being Death Troopers, probably his most well-known book, as well as Red Harvest, the prequel to Death Troopers, and Maul Lockdown, all 3 of which are amazing books in my opinion. Not necessarily, at least in terms of Red Harvest and Death Troopers, not necessarily the ones with the most in-depth engaging plot and characters, but they are so much fun to read, and Maul Lockdown has that on top of an interesting plot and characters. And I think he doesn't get as much love as he deserves. You could make the argument that, you know, his books are not, like I just said, not as deep in the characters and the story and the themes and all these kinds of things as some other authors, but I think that he writes some really fun books that I just always enjoy reading. And again, I wish he wrote more. I think he's written some of like the junior novelizations for the current canon books, but I wish that they brought him in to write more adult novels, either in Legends or canon, because he is amazing in my opinion. Love every single one of the books of his I've read. I think all 3 of them are crazy underrated. This author I think is super underrated for Star Wars, and so he places at number 2. But of course, that brings us to my number 1, my favorite Star Wars author, which I think I've mentioned before on the channel, so to some of you it may not be a surprise, but that is going to be Claudia Gray. I mentioned earlier at the beginning of the video there was one canon exclusive author on this list, and Claudia Gray is it. I love almost every single Claudia Gray book that I've read. I mean, I have at least enjoyed quite a bit every one of her books. I have adored The Fallen Star, Bloodline, Leia, Princess of Alderaan, Lost Stars. I mean, that right there, I think she's only written 6 Star Wars books, and 4 of them I would say are top tier or close to it. Ones that I really enjoyed. Like Leia, Princess of Alderaan has kind of fallen off for me a little bit in terms of memorability, but I still think it's a fantastic book. But even then, 3 out of 6 books being absolute top tier Star Wars books is a pretty good batting average. And even the other ones like Into the Dark, really enjoyed Into the Dark. Didn't have the strongest plot for me, but I loved the characters. And Master and Apprentice, kind of the same deal. Didn't find the plot extremely compelling, but the character work. Claudia Gray writes, in my opinion, some of the best characters in all of Star Wars. And on top of that, some of her books like Bloodline, really interesting plot, really interesting political themes and things like that. Lost Stars, interesting like romance storyline, as well as really fun connections to the movies. And just in general, every time I read a Claudia Gray book, I am excited to read it. More so, I think, than any other Star Wars author, because I tend to love everything that she has written, and I hope that they bring her in to write some more Star Wars books in the future. It's been a few years since her last one. I hope they bring her in for some more, because all of them, in my opinion, have been amazing. So, yeah, that pretty much wraps up this list. Let me know down in the comments what you think of it, if you agree or disagree with any of my picks. Let me know if you can come up with a list of your favorite Star Wars authors. Let me know what they are in the comments below, whether they be the same as mine or different or whatever they may be, or anything like that, and why you chose them, what particular books of theirs really make them place highly for you. Whatever your thoughts may be down in the comments, let me know. So that is pretty much it for this video. So thank you all for watching, and I will see you all next time.